All that passion, all those protests, and all those promises, this is when it matters, at the ballot box. Thanks for joining us for this election special, California Votes. We want to make sure you vote and you know both sides of the issues. Tonight, we've got you covered, not just the presidential race, but all the down ballot issues. This is where your vote can really make a difference. Among the issues, paying for more taxes, funding schools, and holding police departments accountable. There is a lot of emotion on the line, and we get it. It starts from the top with the president and this pandemic. President Trump is now among the millions of Americans who have been infected with COVID-19. He was hospitalized just days after that first debate with Joe Biden. This is all becoming a campaign like no other in a year like no other.
Tonight, troubling new signs about the pandemic.
With the pandemic dragging on for more than 7 months, a sputtering economy and surge in unemployment, and angry protesters from coast to coast demanding racial justice.
A lot more is at stake here than simply power for the Republicans or power for the Democrats.
For the Democratic Party, the stakes couldn't be higher. If Democrats flip 3 Senate seats without losing any, hold on to the House majority, and if Biden wins the White House, the party will fully control the federal government for the first time since 2011.
This is the most important election in the
Victory for Donald Trump would be more than just a thumbs up from voters. The president would likely view this re-election as a mandate to continue and expand his policies on immigration, the economy, and law enforcement.
You're impeached forever.
It would show that voters in decisive swing states were unmoved by impeachment and accusations of corruption. Race in America is a bigger factor now than perhaps at any time since the civil rights era. The deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other people of color have galvanized the Black Lives Matter movement and pushed calls for major policing reform.
This is one of the few times where I think when you say the words, "This is the most important election of your lifetime," you can say that phrase and actually mean it.
App-based drivers strongly support Prop 22.
For California, a slew of ballot questions that could define everything from the future of the gig economy, like Uber and Lyft, to cash bail for criminal suspects and another possible shift in property taxes. Complicating the vote, more ballots than ever will be cast by mail. It's a near guarantee that we will not know the outcome on election night.
A basic fundamental redefining of the republic, redefining of what democracy means, that is something that I think a lot of people think is on the ballot. I happen to be one of them.
And that democracy starts with all of us and this ballot. There's a good chance you've received yours by now. Every single registered voter in California is getting one of these by mail, and there's one reason why. COVID-19. On May 8th, in the midst of the shutdown, Governor Newsom announced that he'd signed that executive order. It made California the nation's first state to allow all mail voting. The idea of mailing in your vote is not new. In fact, it was first allowed during the Civil War. So you have your ballot and you're ready to fill it out, but be careful. Make sure to avoid a simple mistake. Let's bring in our consumer investigator, Chris Kimura. Chris.
The rules and style of ballot vary by county. We're using one provided by the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters. But there are some important basics. We're going to cover those and basically just follow directions. After you open your ballot, find the right pen. The Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters says a blue or black ink pen. No pencils, no crayons, no markers. The registrar also says do not use red ink. Using your blue or black ink pen, you can write in a candidate. But don't randomly mark up your ballot. Follow the directions. For example, Santa Clara County voters should only fill in the ovals. Other counties use arrows or lines. Stay within the lines and fill them in completely. If you make a mistake, don't worry. You can request a new ballot by phone, but that takes time, so consider working on your ballot early. Signing your ballot envelope is required. The registrar says your signature must match the signature on file on your voter registration card. Beware. If your signature is missing or does not match your voter registration card, your ballot cannot be counted. Let's talk about sending your ballot. There's been a lot of talk about the post office and mail delays, but you don't have to use the mail. You can drop it off at your local elections office. Look for other drop boxes at places like city halls, libraries, and community centers. Your registrar of voters office likely provided a list with your ballot. If you can't drop off your ballot yourself and must mail yours in, consider sending it early to ensure it arrives in time. The Santa Clara County Registrar says your voted ballot must be received by the Registrar of Voters by 8 p.m. on Election Day or must be postmarked on or before Election Day and received within 17 days of the election. No matter where you live, your mail-in ballot likely arrived with instructions. We encourage you to follow them to make sure your vote is counted. Chris Kimura, NBC Bay Area News.
All right, Chris, good information there. And usually we just talk about the issues and the candidates, which we will in just a moment. But this year, so much talk about election fraud. This is a huge talking point for President Trump. So is he right? Is mail-in voting safe?
When you do all mail-in voting ballots, you're asking for fraud. People steal them.
Many may wonder if they can actually trust this year's election.
I received an email saying that your ballot has been canceled.
A lot of different concerns, a lot of different opinions on this. Some other concerns: will your ballot reach its destination, and can people tamper with it? We wanted to get to the bottom of some of these questions. We tracked exactly where your ballot goes once you drop it off in the mail and what's being done to keep it safe before, during, and after it's counted. Here's NBC Bay Area's Anusha Rasta.
For the first time ever, Santa Clara County hit an all-time record of 1 million registered voters. The county expects many of them will choose to mail in their ballots this year. So what happens to your vote once you do?
So once you mail your ballot, it comes back to our office. When it gets to our office, it goes through our sorting machines that will actually sort it and scan the signature on the envelopes.
Each signature is then compared to a signature on file for the voter in a database. If you forget to sign your ballot or the signature doesn't match, the county elections office will let you know by whatever means you have on file and give you a chance to fix it. Once a ballot is approved, it's removed from the envelope, flattened, and processed through another machine and then counted right away. The county registrar of voters insists they keep ballots private and secure.
Once the ballot gets here, it's mailed. It's under security 24-hour cameras. They're locked in a certain area, every night.
Also coming in the mail, the county is sending out its information guide too to walk you through the process.
This county voter information guide has everything you need to know about the candidates you're voting for and how to properly complete your ballot. This is the very busy warehouse where all of these guides get labeled with your address so they can be mailed out to you, the voter.
A recent NBC Bay Area investigative report put the U.S. Postal Service to the test to see if the agency can get mail-in ballots in on time. It found no significant delays that would affect this year's election. The Postal Service denied our request for an interview and a tour of their mail processing facilities, but sent us this video instead. The agency also insisted in a statement that it is ready to handle whatever volume of election mail it receives, explaining that even if all Americans were to vote by mail this year, 330 million ballots over the course of the election would be only 3/4 of what the Postal Service delivers in one single day. Anusha Rasta, NBC Bay Area News.
Okay, the post office says they can handle it. So what about the old-fashioned way, though, voting in person? It's not going away. It's just going to be a little different. If you don't want to mail in your ballot, you can vote in person anytime between now and November 3rd, which is the actual election day. In California, early voting began last week, but the pandemic has changed the process like so many other things. San Francisco's outdoor voting tent looks more like a field hospital than a polling place. It's one of more than 500 polling places in the city. Santa Clara County converted an atrium at the registrar's office for carefully distanced voting stations. It's one of more than 100 voting centers in that county. And we mentioned from Chris Kimura, pro sports teams are also lending a hand. Civic areas here. Starting on Halloween, you can drop off your ballot at Levi's Stadium, Chase Center in San Francisco. That's where the Warriors play. The Oakland Coliseum and Arena, and the Shark Tank in San Jose. Now, if you want to find a voting location closest to you, just pull out your voter information guide. Hopefully, you still have one of these. It should come in the mail for you, and it contains a list of ballot drop-off locations and a list of places to vote in person. You can also find these lists online. Just go to your county's Registrar of Voters website. Up next, independent contractors like Uber drivers, property taxes, and affirmative action. A lot of important state propositions. We're going to take you and give you both sides.
I'm Senior Investigator Stephen Stock. Will your mail-in ballot reach its destination in time? We put the U.S. Postal Service to the test, mailing out hundreds of letters across the Bay Area and beyond. See the results of what we found. Just use the QR code at the bottom of your screen. Take your phone out, point your camera at it, and it'll take you right to our investigation. Or you can go on our website, nbcbayarea.com/investigations.
We get it. There's a lot happening on your ballot. 12 statewide propositions. A proposition is a referendum or measure that's put up to the people for a direct vote. In order to pass, each prop needs to receive a simple majority, which means 50% of California voters need to vote yes. Let's walk through some of them. First up, Prop 19, the property tax break. If approved, all California homeowners who are 55 or older can buy a new home and will not see a property tax increase. That means their rate will stay the same or go down. Also, say you lost your home in a wildfire, this tax break would be extended to you no matter your age. All right, how about Prop 21? It's about rent control. What if you rent your home? A Prop 21, in order to pass, cities would have more control over rent control. It would apply to properties that are more than 15 years old. The changes would occur only when a new tenant moves in. And then there's Prop 16. This is a hot issue. It's all about race. If passed, it means that race, ethnicity, and gender could be used for things like admissions into colleges and universities. It could also be used for awarding government contracts. Let's bring in Jessica Aguirre and Cheryl Hurd for a conversation about this proposition and its potential impact.
The issue of race in America reverberating across the country. It's a topic we here at NBC Bay Area have devoted hours of coverage to, and it's an issue on the November ballot as well. Every California voter will be asked to vote on Proposition 16 this November. It's a proposition that would reverse the ban on affirmative action. Now, this issue dates back 24 years when California voters passed Prop 209, which dictated that gender, race, or ethnicity should not come into play when it comes to employment and education in the state. Here's what both sides are saying about Proposition 16 this time around.
I think what happened with the murder of Mr. Floyd is Americans, white Americans, now see, wow, racism is still there. It hasn't just been black people and Latinos and Asian Americans and Native Americans complaining about nothing.
Yes, this summer has been a summer where we're focused on race. And, that's a legitimate thing and something that we all do need to think about. But the question is, are we going to fix the problems in society by creating programs of preferential treatment?
Now, California, by the way, was the first state to adopt a constitutional ban on race and sex-based affirmative action, at that point receiving over 54% of the vote. NBC Bay Area's Cheryl Hurd has been reporting on this issue for years. And Cheryl, you remember when affirmative action was repealed in 1996 and the impact that it's had, all these years, especially when it comes to schools.
That's right. It was 1996. I just spent 4 years reporting in Detroit, coming back to my home state of California, where voters were embroiled in a vicious fight over affirmative action and Proposition 209. Ward Connerly, you probably remember him. He is the member of the University of California Board of Regents and, should be noted, a black man, led the 209 campaign, saying affirmative action was meant to be temporary. He is leading the No on Prop 16 fight today. Members of his campaign saying having race and sex excluded from state school applications and work contracts is working, and of course, the other side disagrees.
We have plenty of successful African Americans and Latinos here in California, and that's a good thing. And we also have a number of people who are of all races who do need that little extra leg up. And that's what public education is all about.
In the 24 years since Proposition 209 was passed, Businesses owned by women and people of color have lost $1.1 billion a year. Imagine what that money would have done in the pockets of women and people of color.
Well, the no on Prop 16 folks disagree with those numbers, but the yes on Proposition 16 says all this proposition will do is level the playing field. It will be very interesting to see how voters come out and vote after 24 years, Jessica.
Yeah, 24 years. Here we are in 2020, and so many things have changed, and yet so many other things when it comes to race and equity have not. You've been out there talking to people and voters. How do they think they're going to cast this vote this time around?
Well, it's really interesting to note that this is a very partisan issue. People who have made up their minds have already made up their minds. In my opinion, it will depend on who comes out to vote in November.
As it is with that entire election. All right, thank you very much, Cheryl.
Okay, thank you, Jessica and Cheryl. Another theme of this election, the criminal justice system. Prop 17 here, allow parolees to vote. It would restore their right to vote if you're on parole. If passed, this could restore the voting rights for up to 40,000 Californians. Prop 25, replace cash bail. It's all about that here. A yes vote would eliminate it. No on 25 would continue to allow it. There's also tech reform. Prop 24 asks voters to expand consumer privacy laws. If passed, consumers would have more rights to limit companies from sharing their data. Companies could also face greater fines for sharing data related to children. All right, here's the big one in terms of exposure and money being spent. Prop 22, independent contractors like Uber and Lyft drivers. Should companies be forced to make them employees? NBC Bay Area's Joe Rosado Jr. has a look at both sides.
I've been driving for nearly 5 years.
When Jim Pyatt punches the clock for his job as an Uber driver,
There's nothing else quite like it.
it somehow doesn't feel like work.
And I find this fun, entertaining, talking to people.
He's a retiree who commutes from Modesto to San Francisco to pick up passengers.
I just liked it because I could do it when I wanted. I have grandkids. My wife and I like to travel.
But that flexibility changed when the state passed AB 5, which reclassified gig workers such as rideshare drivers as actual company employees. Rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft fought the law and even threatened to shut down in California. They're now backing Prop 22 on the November ballot, which would exempt them from AB 5 and allow drivers like Pyatt to remain independent.
We're in a technological world. Why can't we have cars with technology driving around town, taking work and doing it when people want?
That sentiment is echoed by driver Jimmy Strano, who because of a physical disability can't work every day.
You know, that's why I took this job to begin with, because I didn't have to pick and choose a schedule to work into, and I like being my own boss.
22 would set wage guarantees for drivers and health insurance subsidies for those who drive a certain number of hours. But other drivers see a downside to not being classified as employees. Lyft driver Makila Edwards says she and other drivers have been forced to supply their own PPE during the COVID pandemic.
These are very rich companies, and they should be doing more to support the drivers.
Edwards says Prop 22 would take away benefits granted under AB 5, like sick time and health care.
It basically carves out a special place for these companies not to have to follow the law, and it would only benefit these companies.
So far, the Yes on 22 campaign has raised $180 million, the most ever for a California initiative.
I like to help people.
Pyatt's car leaves no doubt about his position on 22 and his thoughts on what will happen if it doesn't pass.
I'm out of a job, plain and simple.
His hope, the only time clock he punches, will be his own. Joe Rosado Jr.
I just love it.
NBC Bay Area News.
All right, you want to know more? We've posted a detailed look at all 12 of the props. We've created a special page. Just type in NBCBayArea.com/election guide, and you notice lower left of your screen, you can also scan that QR code right there, lower left portion of your screen. We'll show it to you again at the end of this show. Well, what makes all of this so powerful, we're being asked to make decisions about our own communities, local ballot measures. They include money for Caltrain, higher sales tax, and even allowing teenagers to vote. Let's bring in our political analyst, Larry Gersten, along with Janelle Wang.
Well, let's start with Measure RR, Proposition RR, the Caltrain measure.
Yeah, that's a regional issue, Janelle. San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara counties, those are the counties that run Caltrain. Caltrain has no independent revenue source. And with traffic going down by about 95% thanks to COVID, there's really no money coming in. This idea is to give it an independent financial source, this 1/8 cent tax, for 30 years, which will keep it going and make sure that there will be no stopping just because of something like COVID.
Right, and the Caltrain has said they are close to possibly shutting down because they have no income coming in, with ridership down about 95%. So a lot of commuters keeping an eye on that one. What about in San Francisco? There's Proposition G. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's come up before. And the idea is to provide the franchise, the vote, for 16 and 17-year-olds on local issues. They couldn't be able to vote on state and federal issues, but on local issues, sort of like get them involved early, get them involved civically. It's gone up a couple of years ago, it's defeated. We'll see what happens this time.
Okay, and several cities, Larry, have a measure surrounding the police auditor, giving the police auditor more power. This is a very contentious issue given this year between the police departments and the black communities, with all those black people killed at the hands of police. Tell us about this and which cities are doing this.
This would appear to be a consequence of the social justice movement, so that local cities, Berkeley's one, Oakland's one, there are others as well, are changing the composition of either the police auditor's role or the police commission. San Francisco is another one. And the whole idea is to throw out more power to other sources besides the police, in effect checking the police. Again, it's a result of the social justice movement across the country that's even hit here in California.
Okay, Larry, the pandemic has hit so many cities. It hit Caltrain hard. It has hit cities hard. A lot of them say they've lost so much revenue because of COVID-19, and about half a dozen cities, as well as Alameda County and Contra Costa County, proposing a sales tax increase to generate some more revenue. How do you think those will do?
It's hard to know. In most cases, it's a simple majority, which helps. Years ago, it would be 2/3, but still, the question is, how do people feel about being taxed when so many are not working? So sales taxes are the easiest way for local governments to collect the largest amount of money. But in addition to sales taxes, we've got proposals this time around for the transit occupancy tax, the hotel tax, the utilities tax is another one, and parcel taxes.
How much is the sales tax increase that's being proposed? Is it the same across the board for all these cities and counties?
Oh, some cases it's as little as 1/4 cent. In other cases, it's as much as a full cent. That's a big jump. And we see a particularly large amount of tax increases proposed in Contra Costa County, which in general hasn't been as tax-oriented as the others, but this may be their opportunity, if you will, to catch up.
Okay, a lot of cities and counties need a financial boost because of the pandemic this year. Okay, Larry, thank you so much for your time and your insight, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Larry and Janelle, thank you. Up next, not just props and numbers, but people and faces. The local seats up for grabs and how they'll shape what happens in Sacramento and Washington, D.C.
I'm Jonathan Bloom. Wondering how to make sure your vote counts? Turns out your phone can help with that, with everything from where to vote to tracking important deadlines to even making sure your friends and family are voting too.
We live in a performative age, right? People want to share what they're doing, and when they see their friends doing it, they want to participate as well.
We're talking to the creators of My Vote Counts, a mobile app designed to do all this and more. Watch my full story at NBCBayArea.com or on the NBC Bay Area YouTube channel.
We know this, California is a blue state, especially here in the Bay Area. The Bay Area has 13 representatives up for re-election. That includes House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She's being challenged by another Democrat, Shahed Buttar. How about our 2 U.S. senators, Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein? Neither are up for re-election, but as you probably know, Senator Harris could be vacating her seat. If she and Joe Biden win the election, it would be up to Governor Newsom to find a replacement for her. That person will serve through 2022. There are also open seats in local races. Jerry Hill, representing parts of San Mateo and Santa Clara counties, is termed out. For this seat, Josh Becker is facing off against Republican Alex Glue. State Senator Jim Bell, who represents Santa Clara County, is also termed out. Democrat Dave Cortese is running against another Democrat, Ann Ravel. And for State Assembly, District 25, which represents Fremont to Santa Clara, Kenson Chu is leaving. Alex Lee is running against Republican Bob Brunton. All right, as promised, that QR code we were talking about, it'll take you right to our election guide. It's right there back on the screen, lower left. I'm Raj Mathai. For everyone here at NBC Bay Area, thanks for joining us. We hope you get out there and vote. This election is up to us.